Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. 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 Good. So, first of all, I'd like to thanks TT Global Learning Systems for inviting me and giving a speech here and talking to you all. It was more than me coming and talking here. I mean, I would be listening to 4 or 5 speakers and taking some learnings back. That's the most interesting part here. I would also like to thank Siji. I mean, she's the one who introduced me here for coming and talking on a subject. And I'm going to talk to you about how do we grow in this diverse and VUCA world. So how many of you know what is VUCA world? So VUCA stands for, V stands for volatile, U stands for uncertainty, C stands for complex, and A stands for ambiguous. So we all know how the world is changing. It's completely VUCA, and every now and then a lot of disruptions are happening around the world. And when I saw this topic, I started making presentations and everything, and suddenly today in the afternoon, I called up Anil, how do I carry my presentation? And I was really shocked, and that was the first VUCA for me. So I was told there's no presentation. I thought we are going to write something and come down. I said, okay, fine. At least give me a table where I can put something, my iPad, and talk about it. And then here am I, again, there's no table is missing. I said, okay, fine. So now here I am right now talking to all, and all those presentations I will replay in my mind. Of course, it becomes difficult, right? And in the corporate world, when you're talking, you have a collar mic and you can freely move your hands, and then suddenly there's no slides here, neither a collar mic. So so it's a complete VUCA world. Okay, taking in the interest of time, let me carry on, and I will replaying my presentation in my mind. So I will take some pause in between, which will be buffering my memory. So let me talk about what is VUCA world. So as I said, it's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And across the world, when you see on the world map, and this presentation, while I have made it, I will send it to Anil. And I will ask him to send it across to all of you. So if you have leisure time, you can go through that. So when you look at the world, look at India, look at your Asia-Pac region, look at your the world over. A lot of things are changing. The oil prices are down. The economies who are surviving on the oil economy, mainly Russia, mainly Iran, Saudi. Everybody has made their budgets on those pricings. But the prices are so low, they're finding it difficult to survive right now. You look at the entire Middle East, the IS, and the movement of IS, it has disturbed the entire region out there. You look at Brazil, which was a growing economy like India, and we used to call BRIC nations, and how the BRIC nations are going to grow. And the Brazil is nowhere. I mean, the inflation rates are around 14%. The interest rates are around 12%. And the economy is going in shambles right now. So what's happening in this world? Russian economy, look at this. The growth rate is very, very low. China, it has its own challenges. So we are all learned people. So we get lots of information, news across Facebook, across WhatsApp. So I don't have to get into detail of what's happening there, but every economy is facing its challenge. And then there comes some kind of disruption. There's come some kind of electric cars disrupting the traditional car makers after 100 years. I mean, the kind of time it took to bring an electric car itself is 100 years. So imagine people are not ready to change or don't want to change. The industries don't want to change. But there somebody all of a sudden comes and say, okay, hey, I will bring in the electric cars, and it sells in one day 200,000 cars. That's huge, right? And that same company is coming with the power walls, which is going to change how the electricity or your power is lighting up inside the house. What will happen to the electricity companies when that comes in? So it's a complete disruption which is happening, and here we are, we don't know what's happening and where to go. What do we do? Right, and how do we survive? Coming back to India and Asia-Pac itself, like China has its own challenge on growth, overcapacity. You have Japan, which is struggling on its exports economy because it's primarily an export. And what happened to China? I mean, US is the only company which is at least, even though the GDP growth rate is at 2%, still it's much, much better because the 2% is on $18 trillion economy, right? So the 2% itself is a huge amount of money. It's not that small amount of money. But it's still growing because a lot of innovation is happening, and it's happening in US, right? China is being an export economy, no innovations coming from there. Japan has been more or less export. It used to be one of the innovative countries, but still struggling on its own. So when you look at those aspects, Japan struggling on its own, Malaysia, which was a good economy, growing slowly at a pace, Australia struggling on its own in terms of economic growth is happening at 2%. Russia, its negative growth rate last year, this year projected something. India going to grow at 7.5%, 7.5%, and China at 6.5%. But that 6.5%, it's still a big amount because it's a $10 trillion economy. It's not a small economy. India, coming back to India here and now, if you look at the economy itself, the confidence level, there is a survey which comes out from IMA Institute about the surveys done through all the CEOs of the companies in India who are registered with them. And the confidence level of index, which was there in Q2 of 2014, when the government changed, before the government changed, the confidence level was somewhere around 40, right? As soon as the government changed, after 1 year down the line, the confidence level of this index went up to 70. And then gradually coming down again, and we are at around 60, 65. It's improved in the last quarter, slightly better. But what's happening? That means people who are running the business in this country are not confident what's going to happen in this country. That's the level of anxiety which is coming in. CapEx spending, as it's low, a consumer durable company which is there, it's still struggling on its own. They are not spending anything on the CapEx. You're spending on your ITES. Those are the companies which still show some growth rate. So a lot of complexity which is coming in, uncertainty which is lying there. And in this scenario, how do we grow? Right? Everybody wants to grow. The growth comes for personal growth, professional growth, and there are business growth and organization growth. So how do we grow in this kind of economy where we don't know what's happening, in the global scenario what's happening, how things are changing? So how do we grow and sustain our growth? That's the big question marks which come to our mind, right? So where to play, how to play is a big challenge that we have in front of us. But everybody still has to grow, has to invest, has to continue the business what we are doing in. So the most important part of growth is the first parameter which we foresee on the growth that we should continue to do and we should never forget is there are 5 or 6 things which are there, right? One is the people, behavior, and the culture that we want to promote. Second is the kind of funding and the financing that we will require, whether it's our own business, whether it's a company where we work for, or in the personal life what we do. Third is the digital technologies and the analytics that we would like to adapt. Fourth is the alliances that we should make. Fifth is the customer, the most important, but after the people one which comes in. But in the entire thing, definitely we should not forget the process management. We should not forget the risk management. And in the end, everything what we do is for the community, so we should not forget the community. So what is people, behavior, and the culture, right? Any organization, whether we have small or own business organization or the organization where we work for, if the culture is not set right, then the culture will eat your business, your company, in lunch, breakfast, and dinner. So it's important to have a right culture in the organization to drive your culture. So all the strategies will go for a toss if we don't have a right culture. And as Brilliant was talking about the leave policies and all, and similar situation we had, and we said this year onwards, we will not monitor any leaves. We will not have any attendance biometric systems in the organization. And next month onwards, we are going to shortly say, no formals in the office, right? So people are comfortable coming in weekends in a casual. So if they are able to work comfortably in the casual, why should we have all the weekdays, right? And that's the thing we said we'll do it. So third is the most other important is the organization charts. When you look at every organization has organization charts across, And those charts have come from the military era, which is where, and we still follow in our business formats, that we have a CEO, then we have a CFO below them, then we have executive finance or executive HR, all those people coming under the organization chart. Why can't we have an organization chart which is in circular in nature, where the core is your customer? So put your customer at the core in the center, your people, frontline people revolving around that, and further, your senior level leadership and the last level of leadership further revolving and orbiting around that. That helps the culture. And why should we have a HR head doing the appraisal of executive HR? Why can't the operations head do executive HR interview appraisals in the year? Why can't the executive finance can be appraised by the business leader, by the sales guys? So this is how we should ensure that the culture which we create, can we look at changing the organization structure where the involvement of all the people are most important? And can we promote entrepreneurship? Can we promote ideas and create idea banks within the organization where we work or within the team what we work? And how do we develop our team? How do we coach them? How do we mentor them? The important part of today's world is mentoring and coaching, and appreciates Umesh's role, what he's doing in coaching. And that's the most important part. Unless we coach our team, because what got us here will not get us there. That's the reality. I'm sure all of you would have read that book of Malcolm Goldsmith. And he's the great writer who has written that book. He's an executive coach to various top guys, including Steve Jobs and all. So the kind of things that we have to do, unless we coach our team, unless we train our team, mentor them, they will not be able to grow and take it to the next level. Second comes in terms of the finance and the funding for the business. When we do whatever we do, you look at today's world, what's happening, and Flipkart, for example, all of you know and you heard of it, what's happening. You know, we are going and burning investors' money by giving discounts after discounts. And the company went from $1 billion valuation to $15 billion valuation, now coming back to $10 billion valuation. Who is burning money here? Investors' money. The businesses are not run on equities because people feel the equity is the most cheapest form of funding, which in reality, that's the most expensive form of funding. Right? So when we build our businesses, the fundings are required. Fundings are required for managing our working capital in terms of capex investment and in terms of people investment. These are three areas where we require funding to do our own businesses. But spend wisely, because cash is the only king here. Unless you generate positive cash flows, we will not be able to sustain our business on a long-term basis. So we need to be frugal. We need to learn how to be frugal on that front. Third, it comes in terms of understanding is the process. Unless we create a right processes and define right processes in our systems, where we operate, we will not be able to win. Results of those processes can be good or bad, right? The outcomes can be good and bad, and mistakes should be allowed. That's fine. Unless you promote those kind of cultures, things will not, organization will not grow. But without a process, if the outcome is good, we all were lucky. But with a process, if the outcome is bad, that's okay to do that. We can still revamp our process, relook at our process, what's gone wrong. But not having a process and outcome is good, you cannot be lucky every time. So please define your processes in whatever way you do. Ensure there is a checklist. There's a good book written on by Atul Gawande called Checklists. A checklist country, and Singapore is a checklist country, right? Everything what they do, there's a tick to every activity. So how do we imbibe that into our activity, daily activity is most important thing to understand. Third is analytics and the data. We cannot shy away in today's world what is happening on the business side, data and the analytics which is happening. Lot of social media platforms which are creating information and loads of information. And then after that, there is something called IoT. How many of you have heard of IoT? It's called Internet of Things, right? And while the Internet of Things is still not gone ahead and expanded the way it is, people have started coming and discussing on now Internet of Me, right? So first is Internet of Things means, just to give you an explanation, you have your light here, They will be all connected today, tomorrow. You have fans in your house, they will be all connected tomorrow. And they will be sharing lots of data across from one Wi-Fi system to wireless system to another wireless system. So tomorrow a manufacturer sitting here, he will be able to analyze when is this life going to die. And when is that demand from that particular location, from that house, I'm going to get it, so I start better manufacturing that. So that's called Internet of Things. So everything will get connected. Be your mobiles are already connected. So be your TV, be your refrigerator. Imagine a refrigerator is, when you're coming home, it's telling you what's there in your fridge. Yeah, you are left out with only half a liter of milk, so please get a milk, right? So those are things. Or do you want me to order it online? And the fridge itself is passing an order to your nearest retailer or an online website, please supply this milk. So those are the things which are going to happen. And we are moving from there. So how do we adapt this data? So much of data which is going to flow, that means a lot of data sensing is going to happen. But it is important that we make sense of that data rather than just getting those data. So when we need to ensure when we run our businesses, how are we going to adapt this social technology? How are we going to embed this data and interpret the data in the way to understand how the customer behavior is, what is he going to do next, and how can we do it? So it's important to have predictive analytics in place. How many of you understood what is predictive analytics? Right? A Target store in US were able to predict when the customer is buying whether she is pregnant or not pregnant. And if she is pregnant, they were able to predict and recommend her through mails, auto mailers, saying these are the products available pre-pregnancy and post-pregnancy. And there was a lawsuit on, class suit on Target. But how did they get that? How did they know the customer she has walked into my store and she is pregnant or no? No, how did they analyze that? It's all about the data, what she is buying, how much she is buying, what kind of product is buying, where is it required, and system is analyzing everything and telling this is what is the predictive analytics. So how do we imbibe those into our system is also important, and how do we take it forward to understand our customers, our vendors better is most important to us to know. Then comes the customer. Ultimately, he is the king. Right? We cannot deny that. After people, anybody who is important in the system is the customer, and he is the king, and that cannot be denied. Right? So what do we do? What does the customer want? When he wants? How much he wants? That's more important to understand that, fix that things. Relationship of customer is also important. Today, we give importance to relationship by sending auto mailers, telecallers and all, but always the relationship with the customer is one-to-one. The kind of relationship which happens one-to-one, face-to-face, eye-to-eye is far, far better than having your mailers and telepresence. So how do we invest in that relationship? How much time and money has to be invested in the relationship is what we all need to assess. But we cannot ignore the relationship of a customer is most important. Third and foremost, innovate and deliver on new products. What does your customer do? What is his expectation, and how can I make his life easy, better and faster so that he is profitable? Don't think of your profits. What is that you can do better for him so that he is more profitable, he is more sustainable, so that you are continuously getting your breads, right? So that is what we need to focus on to ensure our customers are happy. So what kind of strategies that you can put in place? So there's a good book, I made a presentation recently which was on Blue Ocean Strategy, which talks about how is that you can conquer the market beyond your customers, right? And there are tools and mechanisms how to go about doing that. So that's on the customer front. When we look at the process, which I talked about, then it comes to basically on the risk. While we do everything, the risk management is important, right? Unless we manage the risk and understand the risks, we will not be able to survive, right? While we do everything right, the risk is the most important part. So what are the various types of risk typically happens in the business, right? There are business risks, operational risks, statutory risk, regulatory risk, environmental risk, and all risk comes with a cost. The kind of energy, time, bandwidth which gets sunk to. Look at Nestle case. What is that? There was a statutory or regulatory risk which played into Nestle, and they lost crores of rupees by first not selling it. And once it got into the market, the branding, the marketing, the cost that they have spent on that, it's a huge cost for one small mistake, right? So how do we understand this risk? Because in various risk forms that we have, there are various types of risk again within that, right? There are known risks. The risks which we know and we know how to address it. There is known unknown risks that we know that we don't know this risk. Unknown risk, which is the most dangerous part. Unless we try to figure that out, what is unknown risk, and apply to that, we will not be able to succeed. And there is something called known risk. So there are 4 types of risks on each of the parameters. How do we understand what are those risks on, what is known risk, what is unknown risk in each of the 6 parameters which I talked about. Within that, once you identified that, how do you treat that risk? How do you transfer that risk? And how do you terminate that risk? Is what we have to apply our mind on. Of course, whenever we define a risk, we need to put a measure to that. What percentage, weightage of risk this will be, and how do I value that risk? What happens in today's business scenario when you look at business presentations which are made, whether it's a startup company making that, whether it's a financial companies which are making that business risk presentations, they show projections of the growth for the next 5 years, 6 years, and the growths are always a straight line up. But in reality, the business runs like this. There are ups and downs, right? And if you have to sustain in those ups and downs, then you have to identify well in advance this risk, associate a value to that risk, plug that value into your annual P&Ls, and ensure that even though that risk has not happened, that value is parked there. So whenever that risk happens, there is a business uncertainty, those values will help you to sustain those things, and your balance sheet or your P&L is always on the upward journey, right? So those is about risk. Finally, it's all about the leadership. Everything what we have said, if we don't have right leadership and right decision making, things will also fall apart. So it's not about the culture, but it's also about leadership and who is driving that. So as a leader, when we develop our business plans, when we do our activity plans, whether it's in personal life, because whatever we are doing, we are leading in a house. When we are staying, we are also a leader in house because we are a leader to our child. He sees us as a role model. So when we look at as a leader and we say, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and you look at your spotlights which is around you, right? And you try to find your answers within that spotlight. But in reality, please try and look at the spotlights which are next to you. This room, there is a spotlight here. There is a spotlight here. There is a spotlight here. Talk to people and understand and share your ideas, right? Understand from them what are they saying. And then these 2 aspects, your spotlight and the spotlight, will ensure that your decision making is much faster, right? You are able to take better decision, informed decision, calculated decision, which will help you in a long journey. And this will also help you in avoiding decision fatigues, right? What is decision fatigues, basically, right? If you look at most of the survey and a study which was done globally, which says in the courtroom, any court order given by the judge in the first 2 hours of the day is always the best decision, a best judgment. And any decision after 2 hours, it will be wrong and it will be again challenged in the higher court. Why it happens? Because after a certain time, the decision fatigue set in. And you tend to take either decision in a quick manner and try to resolve things, and that's all happens. So it's important to understand your own spotlight, other spotlights which are around you, take an informed decision, and take a calculated decisions. But in the journey, when you look at spotlights which are around you, don't be confirmation bias, right? Because when we go and talk to others and find out, okay, this is my idea, this is my plan, what will you view? In 10 people, there will be 3 people who will be talking your similar language, and you become confirmation bias. You said, okay, these guys are saying, 3 guys are saying, no, it's okay. And 7 are not saying, but try to understand why they are not, not with you as per your plans. What is that wrong in that? Try to step away from your own mentality, right? This is what you're doing is right. So Stay away from confirmation bias. End of the day, whatever decision you take, the outcome will be right or wrong, right? But try to avoid escalation of commitment. So what do you mean by escalation of commitment? Any idea? Sorry? Sorry? No, escalation of commitment is different, right? No. So when you know things are not shaping right, in anticipation of hope, no, one day it will turn right, you keep pumping money. You still keep pumping money. No, it will happen, right? What happened to Shubiksha? Knowing business model is not set right as a retail store, but still they went on going ahead and investing more and more stores. What happened to Kingfisher? Knowing the first, not settling the business model, but still investing in more and more before setting the business model right and making profitable. It's called escalation of commitment. So even though decision is wrong, and when you realize it's wrong, please step back. Don't escalate your commitments. Don't go ahead for that, right? So that's more important, because ultimately leadership is not a destination, it's a journey. It's a marathon and not a sprint. It's an outcome, it's a process, but not an outcome. So in the leadership journey, please try and have its own space. Look at all the things that you're looking at, and I'm sure the success is going to reach you. At the end, finally, whatever we do in this society. We all are together, outside world is together, and we do in the society. Hence, it's important we do something for the society, right? In the community activity is most important thing. We should not forget that. So in the community means what? Basically today's jargon, it's called CSR, right? But yeah, it's important to do CSR, but I personally believe it's not about donating money and CSR. Do you get satisfaction from that? Whereas if you go and paint some schools, like in our organization, we started the CSR activity 2 years back, and we were saying, okay, DC, HR, you told the HR guys, please ensure across our 20 location, everybody is doing CSR in a year. HR started forcing that and chasing our people. And we said, no money, we will not give you money. Do CSR activity without the money. First year they were reluctant. 4 or 5 facilities went in and did some CSR activities. They went to another ashram, they together themselves collected some money. It was an old age home. They went there full day. They cooked they brought the food stuff, everything. They cooked for the old people who were staying in the old age home. They served them, they cleaned the vessels, and the next day came back, and the kind of happiness they got, this was completely different. There is another facility which went into an old school somewhere in the village. They painted the whole school, right? They painted the whole school, did it themselves. It's not about donating money. So donating money is also important for CSR, but to get your own satisfaction, do go and do something else in that ground. It's important to do that, right? And then that's where you get your self-satisfaction level, which is much, much higher than just donating money. Of course, donating money helps, a lot of things will help, and I'm sure Umang will be able to take it to the next level as far as the CSR activity is concerned, and we will definitely support that, and we are here to support that for you. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.